Okay, so good morning. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Today's daf is daf tet vav in Bava Metzia.
Maybe souvenirs when you went there.
No souvenirs. So all right, we're gonna get going with today's daf. So today's story is about what again, we've been talking about what happens if I steal something, I steal somebody's property and I sell it. So now you, Mark, bought the property from me and you made improvements to it. And now the property is nicer. So what happens? Do I owe you only what you paid me, or do I have to pay you for those improvements? So Rav said that if Reuven sells property to Shimon that turns out not to have been his, so Reuven stole the property. So Shimon can receive compensation for both the purchase price and for any improvements he made to the land.
And just to tell me where we're starting again, please.
I'm sorry?
Where are we starting again?
We're going to be on the 11th line of Daf Ted Vav Amud Aleph. But I'm going over where we're up to so that the question, because we're in the middle, we're about to ask a question. And unless we give the background, we're not going to.
That's okay. Okay.
So Rav says Shimon can receive compensation both for the purchase price and for any improvement he made to the land. Whereas Shmuel says no, you can only receive compensation for the purchase price, not for any improvements to the land, because that looks like ribbis. And so, because effectively the purchase price turns into a loan because it didn't buy anything, because the land still belongs to the original owner. And if Shimon is going to be compensated for the improvements he made, he's getting back more than he, quote unquote, lent to Reuven. So this explanation follows from Nachman, who says that this debate exists even if Reuven told Shimon that he would reimburse Shimon for any improvements that made to the land. We then spent the end of the day yesterday asking how Shmuel could say that Reuven would not need to pay for improvements when a Mishnah and two Baraisas seem to suggest otherwise. So for the Mishnah and one of the Baraisas, so then we explained that they were discussing a loan situation where Reuven borrowed money from Yaakov and then sold property to Shimon with a guarantee. And in that situation, if Yaakov takes the property away from Shimon, Shmuel agrees that Shimon may collect the purchase price from even the real property that Reuven sold after the sale to Shimon, and the expenses associated with any land improvement from the property that Reuven has today. Meaning he can't get it from Nechasim Mishubadim, but he can get it from Nechasim B'nei Chod. And so now the second brisa discussed the ability to collect for lost produce, noting that the principal could be collected even from sold property, again, Nechasim Mishubadim, while the produce could only be collected from owned property, from Nechasim B'nei Chorin, that weren't sold to somebody else subject to a mortgage. So here, we cannot answer that the brisa is talking about a loan because Shmuel does not allow a creditor to take fruit away from someone who purchased mortgage land from a debtor. So as a result, we ended up with three explanations that we concluded with yesterday. The explanation number one was offered by Rava, that the case in the Brisa is talking about where a robber stole field that has produce on it. The robber consumed the produce, and then the robber destroyed the field. He dug up the field, ruining its value. So when the original owner takes back the field back from the robber, he can also collect from land that the robber sold to cover damage to the property. But for the produce, the original owner may only collect from property still in the robber's possession. That was explanation number one. Explanation number two, Rabba Bar Huna said, the case in the Brisa is where, according to Rashi, non-Jewish extortionists took the field from the robber because he was holding it, i.e. they wouldn't have taken it from the original owner. So he collects from land that the robber sold to cover the value of the original property. But for the produce that was on the land, the original owner may only collect from property still in the robber's possession. And Rav Ashi offered a third explanation. He said we're dealing with two different claimants. The robber ate the fruit from the stolen property, and the robber sold the stolen field. So the purchaser of the stolen field, who has it taken from him, collects from even property that the robber sold, meaning even from Nechasim Mishubadim, while the original owner of the property when he collects for the fruit that the robber ate, he collects only from property that the robber has in his possession. Now, as we pick up on the 11th line of Daf Tes Vav and Aleph, the Gemara is going to challenge the answers offered by Rava and Rabba Bar Rav Huna, because, and I'll note that the question that we're going to ask doesn't apply to Rav Ashi, and we'll explain why in a moment. So the Gemara notes a problem with the explanations offered by Rabba and Rav Huna. So let's pick up 11th line. So Bain, right in the middle of the line, Bain l'Rabba, Bain l'Rabba, Bar Rav Huna. So whether you go according to Rava or Rabba Bar Rav Huna, Milva al Pehu, right? So in both of their cases, the original owner of the field is trying to collect something that is effectively a debt that has never been recorded. There's no mortgage that's associated with it. So you should not be able to collect from sold property, from Nechasim Mishubadim of the robber. And so, Umil Ba'al Ein Gova Nechasim Mishubadim. You don't collect it from sold property, from property that is subject to a lien. And so, as a result, how could we be interpreting this brisa as suggesting that you can? Now, this answer does not present a problem to Rav Ashi, because Rav Ashi says that the person claiming the land is the purchaser of the robber, purchaser who bought the land from the robber. And a purchaser who buys land from somebody, that land was subject to a guarantee, does get to acquire the land, get paid back from even Nechasim Mishubadim. So as a result, this is not a question to Rav Ashi. It's only a question on Rava and Rabba Bar Rav Huna, because in both of those situations, it is the victim who's collecting, and the victim is effectively an unrecorded debt. So So here's the story. Kisha Amad Bedin, Bahadar Zabin. The situation is where the robber was brought to court. He was told to give back the land, and as a result, and told that he's obligated to pay back the for any damage that was done. And what did he go ahead and do? Then he sold it. Then he sold the other property. And so as a result, the debt that the robber had to the victim was recorded in court. And according to Rashi, Kisha Ahmad Bedin, if we take a look at Rashi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines down in the Rashi, Kisha Ahmad Bedin, Kodam Shemakar Nechasav, before the robber sold his property, the Kavan de Chayvu Bastin, because Bastin said that he is going to be obligated, Islay Kala. That is something that will be known by the community. And it's as if now what was owed by the robber it's as if the robber borrowed that money with a contract. And of course, any contractual loan is considered to have a guarantee with it. And so as a result, anything that's sold after the court reached its judgment would be collectible by the victim. So nami. Well, 1 second. Why, if you're telling me that when it came to collecting for the land itself, we're talking about a situation where the guy was brought to court, why not say that the fruit and the produce was also a situation that he was brought to court? So Kisha Amad Bedin ala Karen, below Amad Bedin ala Peiros. Well, we're talking about a situation where the robber was brought to court in connection with the principal amount owed for the underlying property, and he wasn't brought to court, and he did not yet, there was no judgment yet with respect to the produce. But umay paska, but why would you differentiate between those two situations? Meaning, once you're going to bring the guy to court, aren't you going to bring him to court for everything? So the Gemara answers not quite. Dama Demilsa, and we're right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 lines down on Ted Vav Amud Aleph. So Stama Demilsa Kitaba Inish Karna Tava Beresha, that when somebody asks for their payment, they start by asking for the main underlying payment, the principal. They're going to ask for the principal before they ask for anything extra. So before he asks for any of fruit compensation, he wants to make sure that he collects the main principal that he's owed. And so
Why do we
that's
say
why.
this is, sorry, why do we say that this is like, as Rashi said, it's a Kim Malva Bashtar? Now you're making, it sounds like, in here, it seems to, he wants to say that it's like an obligation, a loan. This is theft. So if the Ganav stole it, why wouldn't he be obligated a kanas like kefil, like we learned before? I mean, kefil may not apply to karka, but it's a theft and he's obligated in some kanas or a penalty. Why is it?
Well, remember two things. One is we're talking about a robber as opposed to a regular thief. So this is somebody who brazenly took it, and so as a result, kefil does not apply.
Okay,
But
but a kanas, something like that, but
you
not,
know, I
not like.
understand. But the point is that we would not make a kanas on somebody that takes something away from a third party. And here, the obligation that the robber has to the victim does not extend to property that the robber sells to a third party at at any point in time. And so it's only when the public knows about the theft and the judgment has been made against the robber, that's when it's publicly known. And then what Rashi is saying is that that situation is now, it's as if the robber borrowed money from the victim with a contract. And so as a result, from this point forward, if the robber tries to sell any of his property, the victim can collect that property because the buyer of that property should have known about this public obligation for the robber to pay him back and would therefore know that it's possible that the victim could come after any property that the robber sells post the judgment. And so that's what Rashi is telling us by telling us that it's as if it's that it's considered as if it's a malva bishtar, that it's as therefore it has the right to access nechasim mishubadim, even property that the robber has sold and therefore doesn't own at the moment.
Oh, so it's a focus on the third party then, so that the third party should know that this is really belongs to the original owner victim, and he should have investigated. He should have investigated it. But I would still think that the robber has some obligation to the original owner.
Of course he has. He has the full obligation to pay, but we're talking about a situation where
Right.
the robber has essentially bankrupted himself so that he doesn't have to pay, or his situation has changed so that he's effectively bankrupt so that he doesn't have the funds to pay. So you're absolutely right that the robber owes the money. There's no question about that. The issue is how does the victim collect? And we can't allow the victim to collect from somebody else who purchased legitimate property from the robber unless the purchaser of that property had reason to know that the robber was liable to the victim. And that would only exist if there was a court case. And then we'll say that that's equivalent to having a loan. Because if I make a loan to you and that loan is written down, and then you sell property to Moshe, I can go after that property because Moshe knows that there's a written contract between the two of us because every written contract was considered to be known publicly. And again, this principle is effectively the foundation of the recording system in real estate today that we have not only in this country, but in many countries around the world, is all based on effectively this system. I'm not saying that the Jewish system existed before other systems, but this system is certainly a foundational system that is the basis for what we have in the real estate world today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
V'savar Shmuel lokech megazam leis shvacha. Well, 1 second. We're going back to the comment that we said earlier. Is it really true that Shmuel says that one who buys from a robber doesn't get reimbursed by the robber for any improvements made to the land? Because listen to the following. So, Baha'amr Shlei Shmuel Rav Chinana Bar Shilas. Shmuel said to Rav Chinana, Imlis, you got to check. Uksov, and then if you based on your checking, then you can write shufra, whether the guarantee on sold property is from the best property, shvacha, whether it includes improvements, upere, and it includes produce. Now, b'mai, what kind of grabbing or guarantee are we talking about? Because if we're being talked about where the Baal Chov comes and just grabs it away, mi isle payre, there's never a situation where the creditor will be entitled to grab produce that will therefore make an obligation from a seller to a purchaser to pay back for that produce. Because Amar Shmuel, as we saw yesterday, Balchov, Gova es hashvach, Shavach in Aval Peiros low. You can a creditor only can collect from improvements to the land, not from fruit. So it must be where somebody bought from a thief, and the thief is the one who's subject to these obligations when he was writing the contract. So Rav Yosef Hachabamayaskinan. No, you don't have to say that we're talking about a thief, but rather Kagon Sheyesh Lo Karka. Again, as we saw yesterday, what was the concern that Shmuel had about paying for improvement? The concern was that it looks like ribis. But if the robber has land with which he can compensate the victim, the person who bought the land from him, well, then he is allowed to pay back. Then he's required, in fact, to pay back for the improvements because he's giving land, and it won't look like a loan. And even though that would not be appropriate if it were a true loan, here it's not a true loan. It's only mechse karibis. It only looks like ribis, and so therefore that is sufficient for this situation. So Amar le Abaye says, 1 second, mutter lilvot sa b'sa. Are you allowed to loan one saw of grain for another saw at a later date? Meaning, even if you pay back real property or any kind of property, isn't that still subject to the prohibition of ribis? So b'makom sheyesh lo karka, even in where a situation where the person has land, that is not sufficient to allow such a ribis transaction. So because again, the concern is that if I borrow a bushel of grain from you and I pay back that bushel at a later date, maybe the price of the bushel will have gone up, and I'll therefore effectively be paying you interest because I'm paying you more. So we see that ribis does apply, and we allow this even when the borrower has land. So it doesn't, this is not, that why should your answer, Rav Yosef, work? So Amrlei Hasam Hava Hachazvine. The point is that the underlying transaction is different. Here it's a loan, and so as a result, borrowing a bushel of grain will not work because you can still because it's a loan, and therefore if it has an element of interest, we're more concerned about it. But here, there's really a sale going on. And so as a result, as long as the robber is giving back also some land, so then we can say this is really a sale transaction. And as a result, we're going to permit it. Ika Amri, or alternatively, Amar Rav Yosef, where there was a formal kinyan. When we talked about earlier a situation where the robber made a commitment and said he was going to give a guarantee even if there was improvements, that was a situation where he just made an oral commitment. But here, where the witnesses actually did some form of kinyan with the robber, and the robber said, yes, I'm going to guarantee that I'll pay back for the improvements, so then we're going to allow it. So Amr le Abaye, 1 second, well, 1 second, would that be allowed if you were to have some kind of guarantee with respect to a borrowing of grain? Of course not. So Amr le Hasam Alva Hachavzvini. No, Rav Yosef tells Abaye, no, that's where it's a loan. When it's a loan, the laws are more stringent. But here it's a sale, and so as a result, in a sale situation, we can be more lenient. Okay, so now we noted that Shmuel does allow a purchaser of property to get paid for improvements if the property is taken away by a creditor of the seller. So it's not, that would be permitted. So Gufa, Amar Shmuel, Balchov Gobes Hashvach. So again, a creditor is allowed to collect the improvements. So Amar Rabba Teda. Shakach kosev lo mocher l'loker. You should know that this is going to be true, that you can collect the improvements, because that's what the seller writes to a buyer. That what is he going to guarantee? Ana ekom, I'm going to stand behind va'ashape, and I'm going to quiet any concerns va'adabe va'adake, and I'm going to purify va'amrek zavini ilin, and I'm going to make sure that it's all clean. Anything that this sale inun in connection with the properties, va'amaleyon and their expenses, ushvacheyon and any improvements. Ve'ekum kadamach, and I'm going to stand before you, and stand behind this agreement. V'tzave zabina dinan, and of course the purchaser agreed to this. V'kabel aloi, and so as a result, now the seller has that he's accepted these conditions, and since the purchaser has accepted that he's going to get paid back by the seller, the implication is that the creditor may collect it. So Amrle Rav Chia bar Avin l'Rava elameata matana delo ksiv hachi nami delo tarish shvacha. Well, 1 second. If what you're saying is that the only reason that a creditor can collect from improvements to the land is because the purchaser of that land agreed to get reimbursed by the seller. So when you have somebody who receives land as a gift, who never got such an agreement, who never got such a guarantee, does that mean that you would not be allowed to get the improvements? So Amrle yes, that's exactly right. If you receive land as a gift, you cannot get the payment for the improvements. Well, 1 second. That implies that a gift is stronger than a sale, and that seems very unlikely. So Amrle ain yafa v'yafa. It is actually stronger in that you don't get paid. So in fact, that is exactly what we say. So okay. So now that we've dealt with that situation, so we have another brisa that appears problematic from this perspective. So
Why do we say this is a gift? I thought maybe I missed something, but I thought we were the way you learned this. We learned this is that there was this was a sale without a guarantee. Does that make that a gift?
No. The two situations, right? The first situation is no. First of all, the sale is with the guarantee, and so a sale has a guarantee, and so as a result, so again, I sell you land, Ken, but I owe Moshe money, and I owe Moshe money from before I sold you the land, but I sell you the land with a guarantee. So now Moshe comes and you put a new house on the land. And so I say to you that I guarantee that I'm going to pay you back for any investment that you make.
Right.
So as a result, when Moshe takes the land from you, he can take the land with the house. And you now have a claim against me.
Right.
However, if I had instead given you the land and you put a house on the land, and now Moshe comes to collect that same land, same situation, because I borrowed money from him first, he cannot take the house away from you because without paying you, because I did not guarantee the improvements in that situation. And so as a result, you do not have a claim against me, and as a result, Moshe needs to pay you for the improvements that you made in order for him to be able to take the house. Okay, so now that's in a case of a gift, and so in that way, a gift is a stronger thing. I give you more rights when I give you a gift versus again when you compete against Moshe than when I sell it to you, because when I sell it to you, Moshe can take away the property even with the improvements and without paying you anything. And in the case of a gift, a Moshe cannot take the improvements without paying you nothing. And so as a result, that's why we say that's stronger. So now Rav Nachman's going to try and bring a proof to support Shmuel that in fact a creditor collects from improvements of debtors' sold land. So Amar Rav Nachman.
Why? What's the basis for saying in a gift? How does the original owner know that there was a gift arrangement between the robber and the.
No, we're not
and the
talking about a
buyer.
robber situation. I'm a borrower. I'm a legitimate owner of the property I sell you, Ken, and I'm a borrower from Moshe. I borrow more money from Moshe on January 1st. I sell you the property, and it's a written document. So as a result, he has a lien on all my property. I then sell you the property on February 1st.
Well, you
And
sell
so
it,
I either sell it to you or give it to you. We're going to
right?
compare those two situations. If I sell it to you, well, I sold it to you with a typical contract, and that contract guarantees you that I pay you back for any investments if somebody comes along and takes the property away from you. And so when Moshe comes to take the property, you don't have any claims against Moshe. He just gets to take the property. All your claims are against me. And I
Right.
will owe you both for the original amount of that you paid and for the investment that you made in the property. However, if I, instead of selling the property to you, I gave it to you, so now when Moshe comes, he does not have the right to simply take it away from you because you invested in the property. Instead, in that situation, the only time he will be able to take the property away from you is if he pays you for your investment in the property. And so as a result, when you are the recipient of a gift, you are in a stronger position vis-a-vis Moshe than if you were to have just bought the property.
But why is that? How does he know, the original owner know that this was a gift between
Because there's no
the
robber. I'm the original owner. I'm the owner. I don't understand your question.
no,
I'm the original owner. I'm a legitimate owner of the property that I sell to you, Ken.
aren't there three people involved?
There are three people involved: Moshe, me, and you.
Right.
Moshe, I'm a borrower from. I needed money. I went to Moshe. I borrowed $100,000. I then sold a piece of land that was worth $100,000 to you, Ken.
Right.
And so now Moshe has a mortgage on that property because he lent me the money before I sold you the property. Now you put it on a house on that property.
Right. I understand the selling part. I'm puzzled by the gift. Why?
So
If
same
three
situation. So now I give you that $100,000 piece of property.
Oh, so the gift is between the original owner and the second person.
Yeah,
And the
exactly. And
second
you,
person, so the
who,
second person, so where's the third person in this scenario?
well, that third person is Moshe. Moshe is Moshe is my lender. And he still has that same mortgage on the piece of property. And now he's collecting it from you, the recipient of a gift. The fact that you got it as a gift doesn't take away the fact that there's a mortgage on the property.
So the original owner knows that the second person gave it as a
There's
gift to
no,
somebody
I'm the
else?
original owner. I don't understand why you keep saying original owner. I'm the original owner. Moshe is just the lender. Moshe knows that that all the property that I own at the time that I lend to him is mortgaged to him.
Right. I don't know, I'm missing something. It's all right. I don't know.
Again, there's no theft in this situation. We're just dealing with the three people on the screen, you, me, and Moshe. And so Moshe lent me money. I give you a gift of property. Moshe takes the property away from you. Unlike when I sold you the property, Moshe can't just take the property and its improvements because you have no claim against me for the improvements. And so as a result, Moshe needs to pay you for those improvements. Whereas if you were a buyer, you have a claim against me for the improvements. And so as a result, Moshe can take the improvements as well. Okay, but in any event, let's go on to the next brisa
Right.
that again is trying to support Shmuel saying that when a creditor takes property from a purchaser, that he can collect the improvements. So Amar of Nachman Hamas Nisa Misayeh Lamar Shmuel, doesn't this brisa actually support Shmuel? Vahuna Chavrin Mokim La Bamile Achrina. But Huna said, no, actually, I disagree with you, Rav Nachman. This actually brisa doesn't support Shmuel, Tanya, because we have a brisa that says the following: Hamocher sadalech Beirut. If I sell my field to you, I'm going to sell my field to Ken. He yotza mitachas yado, and now it leaves Ken's possession. Kishahu gova, when somebody's collecting it. So presumably, Kishahu gova, when Ken comes back to me to collect for his loss, gova es hakerem min nechasim mishubadim, he can collect the principal, the amount that he paid from the property that I own and that I may have even sold. Ushvach gova min nechasim b'nei chorin, and he can collect for the improvements to the property from property that I own. He can't collect from something I sold to some third party, but he can collect from the property that's still in my possession. And so that shows that the purchaser of real property who has that property taken away by a creditor can collect from the seller even for improvements. But however, Huna, his friend, said no. Mokim he sets it up with a different case, because he disagrees with Shmuel. Shmuel, of course, said that when a Gazlan, when you purchase from a Gazlan, you cannot collect for the improvements because it looks like interest. Whereas Huna says no, we can set this case up with a situation where it's a robber who sells it, and we're talking about a robber who gets it back. Okay, and the purchaser from the robber who gets back even his property, his investments in improving the land. So now we had one effort to support Shmuel. Now we're going to ask questions to contradict Shmuel. So Tanya Idach. So we got another brisa that seems to suggest that Shmuel's wrong, because hamocher sadeh lechaberu, if you sell a field to your friend. So again, I sold my field to Ken, v'hishbicha, and now Ken improves it. Uva balcho v'trafa, and now Moshe, who's a creditor, comes and takes it away because I borrowed money from Moshe before I sold the field to Ken. Kishahu gova, when he comes and collects it, im hashvach yoser al yitzia, if the value of the improvement is more than Ken spent on the improvement, noto etashvach mi balakarka, he's going to collect the value of the improvement from me, meaning the seller, I have to pay for that additional value. I pay Ken for that additional value. But Moshe pays Ken the amount that he invested. So let's give an example. I borrowed $150,000 from Moshe, and now I sell a piece of property to Ken that's worth $100,000, and Ken puts in $30,000 of investment into the property and $20,000, but that $30,000 investment was a great investment. So now the property is worth $150,000, which is exactly what I happen to owe Moshe. But that isn't. We're not going to let just not just let Moshe take the full property away, but rather Ken will have a claim against Moshe for $30,000. That's the investment that Ken made in the property. And because the property went up in value, Ken will have a claim against me for $20,000. So in the end, Ken will be out. And he also has a claim against me for $100,000. So in the end, Ken, you're going to end up getting paid $150,000 for the property, $30,000 from Moshe, and $120,000 for me because you improved it. Moshe is now up $120,000, and I still owe Moshe an additional $30,000. And so that would be the math associated with this situation. However, on the other hand, if the value of the improvement is less than if the value of the cost of the improvements is the cost of the improvements is more than the value of the improvements. So now in this situation, Ken spent $50,000 on improvements to the land, but the land is only up in value by $30,000. So now the land is worth $130,000. Ein lo ela hotza shir shvach mebalcho. So then Moshe is going to only owe Ken $30,000. And so, but what did we see from all of this, Brisa? We saw the following. We saw that Ken was a purchaser of property from me. Moshe was my creditor, and he collects the land from Ken. But Ken does not go to me for the reimbursement of that improvement. He is getting paid for much of that reimbursement of the improvement from the creditor. And so that shows that that's not what Shmuel says. Shmuel says that Ken's supposed to get the improvement from the value of the improvement from me, the person who sold in the property. Shmuel b'may okim. How does Shmuel explain this brisa? Because if we're talking about somebody who purchased land from a robber, if I were in fact the robber of the land, so then kasha resha. Then the first part is difficult because the Amr Shmuel lokech magazlan leis shvacha. You're not supposed to get anything from me, and yet here you are collecting something from me. The ibaval chov, and if we're talking about where Moshe is just a creditor who's collecting the land, kasha reisha v'seifa. The whole thing is difficult because the Amr Shmuel bal chov gova es a shvach, because we said that the creditor takes the improvements away from a purchaser, even without compensating the purchaser at all. So now we're going to offer several answers. So so one possibility is that in fact we are talking about where you collect from, where I was the robber who sold the property to Ken. And why is it that Ken is entitled for extra payment from me, even though Shmuel ordinarily says that you're not allowed to do that? Because we had two answers. Kagon sheyesh lo karka, inami kishakano miyado. Well, we could talk about either a situation where I happen to have other property that I can pay Ken with, and so as a result, it doesn't look like I'm paying interest because I'm also giving real property. Inami b'shishkan or I made a formal contractual kinyan with Ken's witnesses to indicate that I was committing to pay even for improvements. So in both those situations, we allow Ken to collect from me. So maybe that's what we're talking about in that brisa. Or we could say that we're talking about a balcho. Below kasha. And why is it that that Moshe needs to give something to Ken as opposed to Ken getting everything from me? Kan b'shvach, as we turn to Tesvav and Bava, of the Tesvav and Bet, hamagia l'ksafayim, the kan b'shvach she'ena magia l'ksafayim. So one situation is where the produce is ready to be harvested. So when the produce is ready to be harvested, we say that actually Moshe is not allowed to collect that from Ken because it's almost like actual produce. And we say that the produce gets a creditor doesn't get to take the produce. And so as a result, we make Moshe pay Ken for that produce. But when the improvement is not about produce that is ready to be harvested, well, then that's the situation where Shmuel says that Ken gets to collect everything from me. So when we had the sprisa that showed that Moshe was paying for some of the improvements, we were talking about improvements that were ready to be harvested. Okay. So now in second, that's problematic, that second answer, because v'ham masim b'chol yom become a magbi Shmuel. But it seems like Shmuel would regularly allow people to collect from a purchasers of the debtor's land. And they would, and Moshe and Shmuel would not require Moshe to pay Ken for the fact that there was produce on the field that was ready to be harvested. So why? How could you give that as the possible answer? So lo kasha, no, it's not a problem. Why did Shmuel often allow creditors to collect the land, including the produce that is ready to be harvested? That's because I owed Moshe that amount of money. If now, let's say, the produce on the field is worth the again, I borrowed $150,000 from Moshe. I sold the field to Ken for $100,000. Ken invests $30,000 in the field, and now in planting, etc. And now it's ready to be harvested, and the field is worth $150,000. Well, guess what? Because I owe Moshe that full $150,000, he gets to collect the entire field without paying Ken anything, because that is that's how much he's owed. So hub the Damasik leb kashir aro shvacha. When I owe Moshe the full amount of the value, including the improvements, so then he collects everything without paying any expenses, and Ken has to come to me for all of the amount that I owe him. But if he only is owed $100,000, well then he has to give the additional improvement value to Ken. He has to pay for that. And then he gets to remove Ken from the property. So
So do you guarantee when you're selling the property, do you in the contract of your sale, are you guaranteeing also in that scenario the rise in value of the property?
No, I'm not guaranteeing. Remember, the rise in value of the property is not based on a change in the underlying value of the property. The reason for the rise in value of the property in this situation is simply that you have planted and there is produce that is ready to be picked. And so as a result, the value of the land is now equal to the underlying value of 100,000 and the value of the produce on the land, which we're going to assume is 50,000. And so that's why Moshe gets to take the whole thing without paying you anything, because I owed him 150,000. We're not changing the actual underlying value of the property at all.
But I thought you said we break that up, that it was 30,000 improvements and the property also went up 20,000. So the original owner could come and collect everything from the
Again, it's not the
buyer,
original owner,
and
it's
then the
not,
buy and he could take the whole property. It went
again, it's not
150,000. It was 100,000. He bought it for 100,000. So part of that is the change in value of the property, and
no,
part of it is the produce that arose. So
no. Let me clarify. First, again, we're talking about a legitimate sale. We're not dealing with a robber. So, and Moshe is a creditor. So he's not taking back his original property. He's taking back property that was mortgaged to him. So now but he's owed $150,000, and you invested $30,000 in the planting, etc. But the produce that grew, maybe it was a bumper year, and so actually you got more produce than you expected. So now the produce that's on the property is actually worth more than you may have invested in it. Obviously, that's always your goal, is to do more. But the underlying property is still the same original $100,000. There's no change in the underlying property. It's just the produce in the property is worth more than you planted. You planted $30,000 worth of seeds, but now the produce that grew from those seeds is worth $50,000.
So does the seller still guarantee all of that?
Yes, the seller is guaranteeing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, that's exactly right. That's how I'm understanding this. That's exactly right. Okay, so now so now this makes sense according to the opinion that does not give a purchaser the right to say to a creditor, I don't want you to take my land away, so I'm going to just pay you. Shapir, that works because essentially we're not giving the Ken the right to pay the amount that he owes, that I owe Moshe, and thereby keep the land. But according to the view that says that, you know what, Ken has the right to say to Moshe, listen, how much are you owed? I'll just pay you the debt, and thereby be able to keep the property. So so why not allow Ken to say, Ilu havelizizi, if I had money, have a masalikinach mikula ara, I would have taken you out of the whole land. Hashta de now that I don't have land, at least havli garba de araba ara shir shvachai. Listen, at least give me the land of the $20,000, right? I'm supposed to, I put in $130,000 into this land, and the land is now worth $150,000 because of the $50,000 worth of produce on it. And you're going to take that all away from me because you're owed $150,000. But listen, I at least I'm supposed to get at least the $20,000 in profit. So Hakaba Mayaskinan. And so as a result, that doesn't work. Ken should be allowed to say that. So so here's the situation. The situation is where I made the land apoteki to Moshe. I told Moshe that the only land that he's going to be able to collect from is this piece of property. And so as a result, even if in fact Ken does some kind of further investment on it, there's no ability. Everybody agrees that in that situation, you cannot pay the creditor. The purchaser of the land cannot pay the creditor to take it away. To Amar Le, because I said to him, Lo yehe lecha piraon elamizu. You're only able to collect from here. So now the question is, yes,
you can't pay the creditor to take it away. What do you mean?
I'm sorry.
What do you mean you can't pay the creditor to take it
If
away?
I tell Moshe that, so there are two views. Again, there's a machlokus on whether or not you have, so again, I borrow money from Moshe, I sell you property, Ken. Now Moshe comes to collect from you. According to one view, you have no rights. Moshe just takes the property. You don't have the ability to pay him the amount that he's owed. And Moshe can just take the property. According to a second view, you do have a right. You can ask Moshe, how much does David owe you? He owes you $100,000. Here's $100,000. I want to keep the property. And there's nothing that Moshe can do about that. Obviously, the two of you can negotiate something, some other outcome. But according to the second view, Ken has an absolute right to pay Moshe off and thereby acquire it. But if instead of a regular mortgage that I give to Moshe on all of my property, I tell Moshe that I'm borrowing them $100,000 from you, but you only have the right to acquire this piece of property, and then I sell that piece of property to you, Ken, then everybody agrees in that situation that you do not have a right to pay Moshe the amount that's owed. Obviously, again, you can negotiate a settlement, but you don't have the right to simply say, Moshe, you're owed $100,000. Here's the $100,000. I'm keeping the land. Moshe has the right to just say, I'm taking this land, period. And so that's the story with apoteki. Okay, so now the question is, what happens if the now we're going back to the case of stolen land. And what happens if the buyer knows that the land was stolen? And so what's the question there? So, hikir ba she'eino shelo. If the second, hold on, if I can find where we are. Okay. Okay. So here's where we are. So hikir ba she'eino shelo ulakacha. So a person purchased the land, and even though he knew that it was stolen, and now he not only purchased it, but he put improvements on the land. So Amar Rav. So again, we had this machlokas between Rav and Shmuel at the beginning of the day. Rav said, when you don't know that the land is stolen, you get your purchase price and improvements. And Shmuel said you get your purchase price but not improvements. Now you knew that the land was stolen. So Amar Rav Mos Yeshlo Shvach Einlo. You get your purchase price back, but you do not get any payment for improvements. Shmuel Amar Afilu Mos Einlo. You don't even get your purchase price back because you knew it was stolen. So by my kamifliki, what are they arguing about? Rav Savar Adam Yodesh Karka Einlo. That every Rav says that he knows that the property doesn't belong to the seller. The Gamar Benasam Lashum Pikadon. And so as a result, he's giving him the purchase price as a deposit. Well, why not have him tell the guy that he's giving him a deposit? So Savar Lo Makabel, he thinks that the seller's not going to accept. And so as a result, he gives him the money, so to speak, in the guise of a purchase price, but he doesn't actually think that that's what it is. Shmuel Savar, and Shmuel says, Adam Yodeh Shekarka Einlo. Again, the person knows that the property doesn't belong to the seller. The Gomer B'Nasan L'Shum Matana, and so he wants to give him a gift. The name L'Shum Matana. Why not just tell him that he's giving him a gift? Because he's worried that he's going to embarrass the guy, because the guy's going to think that the person thinks that he's poor or something. But 1 second, we already had a very similar debate. The Idmar, because we had the following statements. So if one tries to marry his sister, and of course that doesn't work, Rav Amar Mos Chosrin. Rav says that the money gets returned to Shmuel, Amar Mos Matana, and Shmuel says the gift is that the money is that is given to the sister is considered a gift. Rav Amar Mos Chosrin, Rav says it goes back. Adam Yodeshi ain't Kiddushin Tosin Levachoso, because everybody knows that a marriage doesn't work with a sister. V'gamar v'nasan l'shum b'gadon, and so as a result, he was trying to give her the money to watch it. The name l'shum b'gadon. Why not just tell her that he's trying to give her to watch it? Savar lo makablamine. He thought that she wouldn't accept it from him. And so therefore, he says that he wanted to do it as a marriage, and therefore she'll accept the money, and therefore she'll owe him the money back. Ushmuel Amar Mos Matana, and Shmuel says, no, the money is a gift. Adam Yodeu she'ein Kiddushin Tosin Bacho. So people know that the money, that a marriage doesn't work with a sister. But Gomer v'nasam l'shum matana. So he decided he was going to give him give the money to her as a gift. The name of l'shum matana. Why not just tell her that it's a gift? Because ksifa lamilsa. Because he doesn't want to embarrass her. So tzricha, and we need actually to teach both of these. So the question was, why teach it twice? But you need to eat marbaha, because if I were to only learn this by stolen property, bahaka amarav, that's the situation where Rab would say that the money is a deposit below of the inshi diyahave matanas l'nuchra, because people don't give money to strangers, give away money to strangers. About gabi achosa, but when it's his sister, ema model Shmuel, maybe he would agree with Shmuel that it was a gift. But if you only told me the case in connection with the sister, Shmuel, maybe it's only in that case that Shmuel says that the money would be a gift, because the sister is a relative. But when it comes to a stolen property, maybe he would agree with the Rav that the money is only a deposit. So therefore, it's Rika. Therefore, we need to teach both. Bain l'Rav ba'adamar b'kadon, bain l'Shmuel da'amar matana. Whether it's according to Rav who says it's a deposit, or according to Shmuel says that it is a gift. Hala'ara b'maika nachas uperos heiki yachil. If I'm the purchaser of the field that I know is stolen, and I say that I'm not actually doing this as a purchase, but rather I'm giving you either a deposit for you to watch or a gift for you to keep, why am I then going to work and consume the produce of the land? So that seems to be outright theft. So Savar, he rationalizes and thinks the following. I'm going to go to the land, and I'll work and eat it. Just like this thief was going to do. And when the real owner comes, my money will then become l'Rav da'amar pikadon pikadon, l'Shmuel da'amar matana matana, and either it'll become a gift or it'll become a deposit based on Rav's and Shmuel's viewpoint, and therefore that's the way it'll be. All right, so let's see, what do we have? How is the halacha rule in this case? And we'll and maybe we'll just conclude with that, and we'll pick up with some questions, God willing, tomorrow. So Amar Rava Hilchasa, what's the halacha? So yeshlo maos v'yeshlo shvach. That when you buy land from a thief, from a robber, you get paid back both for the money and for your improvements. So we do not paskin like Shmuel. So even though we've had an extensive discussion of Shmuel, we don't paskin like him. And even though you don't explicitly say that you are going to pay for the improvements, the robber is going to need to pay back for those improvements. If, on the other hand, and what about the situation where, which we just talked about, where the purchaser knows that the property is stolen, and yet he purchased it anyway? Again, like Rav, we say that the purchaser gets paid back for the money that they spent. It's a deposit, but he does not get paid back for the any improvements.
So then what's the advantage to, if he knows that it's stolen, what's his thinking? What's his advantage of purchasing it if he knows he won't get the shvach from it?
Well, because but the point is that he may not get the shvach, but he'll get to, until the property gets taken away from him, he can continue to work it and use it and grow produce on it. So it maybe the owner of the field is away on a long business trip for a couple of years, and so as a result, he'll be able to take advantage of that time. And of course, the bottom line is that his intention is just to give this as a deposit to the person who's trying to sell the stolen field, and not as a he's not really intending anything as a purchase. So the bottom line is that you're right. He may not be accomplishing very much at all, but and maybe he's not going to spend any money on the improvement because he knows he's not going to get paid for it. But if he does spend any money, it's because he figures that he'll be okay, and he'll just deal with it when the guy comes back. All right. And achrayas, and what about the whole question of whether there's a guarantee that's in a document, even if it's not included in the document, because that was where we began this whole discussion. So tosoferhu, any kind bein b'shtara halva, bein b'shtara mekach umemkar. Whether you're talking about a note of a debt or you're talking about a sales situation, in both those situations, we're going to say that this is that we're, even if the person who wrote the contract failed to include in it a guarantee, we're going to say that there is a guarantee in the document. So basically every shtar, whether it's whether I borrow money, it gives a mortgage on my property, or if I sell property, it gives a mortgage on my other properties. So as a result, you will be able to collect not only from property that's in my possession, but you will be able to collect from property that I sell after I have my transaction with you. Okay, so we're going to now go back to talking about another situation, another complication to the situation where a robber stole and sold property. But for that situation, you'll need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Sorry that I didn't get quite as far as I had hoped, but God willing, we'll pick up with that tomorrow.
So there's essentially there's always a guarantee on this sale, even if it's not written. We just assume it's a mistake.
If there's a written sale contract, if I sell you property, then I am guaranteeing to you that that this is a good, that I have the ability to sell the property to you, and that you have the ability, therefore, collect from me and my remaining real estate if anything goes wrong. That's exactly right.
And does that always include the shvach or the change?
And it would, and yes, it would include the shvach. We say that the regular language that's supposed to be included includes payment for any improvements that you were to make.
And the seller makes that guarantee.
The seller makes that guarantee, correct.
But this would not apply to a gift.
But it would not apply. That's exactly correct. It would not apply to a gift. There's no guarantee. If I give you property, you have no claims against me. If Moshe comes and takes it away because he has a mortgage on the property.
And Moshe also would not have the obligation to pay for taking away property that was in which there was a gift.
Moshe, no. Well, Moshe would owe you for your improvements on the property if it was a gift.
Okay, but it wouldn't owe for the property if there was no gift.
No,
If there was a gift.
If I just give you, if I borrow $100,000 from Moshe, and then I give you a property that's worth $100,000, and you didn't do anything to it, Moshe can come in and take that property away from you, and you get nothing. All right.
Okay.
We'll pick up, God willing, from Shmuel Me'Rab, a question that Shmuel asked Rab, God willing, tomorrow. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. Have a great day, everybody.